I have lived in Hollow Creek my whole life. It's a small town tucked deep into the mountains, surrounded by forests that seem to stretch on forever. The kind of place where everyone knows each other and secrets are hard to keep, or so I thought. It was the winter of 2012 when I learned that some things are better left unknown. I was home from college for the holidays, spending time with my family. You know, the usual small town Christmas stuff. Sledding, hot chocolate, big family dinners, and of course, listening to the same old stories from the older folks in town. The stories always seemed harmless, even a little silly. You know the kind, tales of things that go bump in the night. The one about the old house on the hill, where strange lights were said to flicker in the windows after dark. Or the one about the miner's ghost, who allegedly roamed the woods at night, searching for treasure. But then there was one story that everyone, even the toughest guy in town, whispered about. The one that made people cross the street to avoid the forest at night. The one about the man in the woods. It was my grandma who first told me about him. She had warned me when I was younger, though I didn't take her seriously at the time. She had a way of telling stories that made you feel like the shadows were closing around you, like the air itself was watching. She always said the man in the woods wasn't a man at all. You see him, you run. You hear me? She said, eyes wide with the kind of fear you only get when you know something you wish you didn't. If you see him, don't look back. Don't even stop blink. Just run. It sounded like something from a nightmare. But when you live in a place like Hollow Creek, you get used to the odd stories. But still, I couldn't shake the unease feeling that came with the stories. I didn't believe in things like that. I thought it was just a silly story, passed down from generations, and nothing more than that. But then, that winter, everything changed. I was 22 at the time, home from college for a couple of weeks. It was a pretty quiet evening. My mom and dad had the usual decorations up for the Christmas, and the house was warm, filled with the smell of pine and cinnamon. It was supposed to be a nice, relaxing holiday, just like any other that happened before. But it didn't take any long for the sense of dread to creep in. It started small. First, there was the way the air felt different that winter. The snow was coming down hard that year, but it was quiet, too quiet for comfort. Normally, the wind would weep through the trees, shaking the branches and causing the snow to swirl around. But that year, the trees barely moved, and the world outside seemed to be frozen in place. I was out at the woodshed one afternoon, stacking some firewood for my mom. It was cold, so cold that you could see your breath in front of you, even though the sun was high in the sky. The snow crunched under my boots as I worked, but everything felt off. It wasn't the usual peaceful silence of the winter. It was a kind of eerie stillness, like something was waiting, watching. I didn't think much of it at first, though I was used to the quiet in these parts. But when I heard it, I stopped dead in my tracks. A distant growl. At first, I thought it might be a bear, but I quickly realized it wasn't. This growl was different, sharp, guttural, and more animal than you could ever imagine. It came from the woods, not too far off from where I was standing. It wasn't like the growl you heard from bears or wolf. The sound was primal. I don't know what came over me, but instead of running, I found myself taking a few steps toward the trees. My heart was pounding in my chest, but my feet seemed to move on their own, drawn towards whatever was hiding in the woods. As I got closer, I noticed the air had changed. It was colder now, almost biting, and the hair on back of my neck stood up. I could feel something watching me through the woods. I didn't want to look, but I had to. My curiosity was overwhelming, and I took one more step into the trees. That's when I saw him. Or at least, I think it was him. At first, I thought it was a man, standing just out of the reach of the trees, almost completely still. I could only make out his shape through the snow and the shadows, but I saw enough to know that he wasn't right. His posture was wrong. The way he stood, it was like he was almost bent, but not quite, as if his body couldn't quite decide whether it was a human or something else. And those eyes were glowing, faintly, an unnatural yellow that stood out against the dark of the forest. I froze. I don't know how long we stood there, but it felt like eternity. The creature, or the man, or whatever it was, never moved, never took its eyes off me. Then, without a warning, it shifted. At first, it just seemed to crouch down, like it was preparing to launch towards me. But as it lowered itself, its limbs began to change, twisting in a way they shouldn't. There was a sickening crack of bones breaking, and I could hear the sound of flesh stretching. My body went into full panic mode, but I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The thing in front of me wasn't human anymore. It was something else, something that shouldn't exist. It had fur now, matted and dark, and its face had elongated, its nose stretching into a snout, sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. Its hands, if you could still call them that, were long, with claws that looked like they could tear through the chain. I don't know how I managed to turn around, but something inside me snapped, and suddenly I was running without even thinking about it. I wasn't sure where I was going, only that I had to get away from there. My legs were burning by the time I reached the home. I slammed the door behind me, my chest heavy, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I stood there, pressing my back against the door, trying to collect myself, but I couldn't do that. I could hear it outside in the snow, the sound of footsteps, heavy and slow, dragging through the snow. Then the low growl again, just outside the door. It wasn't loud, but it was close. I could feel it vibrating through the walls of the house. For hours, I stared inside, too terrified to even look out the window. I could hear the creature circling the house, its breath coming in ragged gasps, just like mine. I don't know when it left. When I finally worked up the courage to check outside, there was nothing. No sign of it. No footprints in the snow. No broken branches. It was as if it had never been there in the first place. I never told anyone about what happened. I couldn't. No one would have believed me. The idea that something like that could exist, that the man in the woods was real, was too much to accept. But I knew what I saw and what I heard. The old stories, the ones I used to dismiss, suddenly didn't seem so silly anymore. The man in the woods wasn't a ghost or a shadow. He wasn't just some story parents told their kids to keep them out of the forest at night. He was something far worse than I thought. I haven't been back to the woods since that night. I'm not sure I will ever go again. But every winter, when the snow starts to fall, I can help but feel the same dread creeping back. The air grows chill, and sometimes, just sometimes, I hear the low growl, faint and distant, just beyond the trees. I never go past the tree line anymore, and I never will. There are things outside beyond our imaginations. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel and enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.